From a handful of Romans settling in London in 50 AD to the 8 million plus people who live here now, London's history has been shaped by a steady stream of new arrivals. But all of these diverse groups have one thing in common: food. Which means that London is ready to indulge the food taste of every single visitor to the 2012 Games. Here at the Container Cafe overlooking the Olympic Stadium itself, the Great British Fried Breakfast is being given a makeover.
Breakfast is obviously quite an institutional thing in the UK, and an English breakfast is not something you want to mess with too much. But at the same time, it's actually nice to consider reinventing something that's a little bit nicer, a little bit healthier. One of the dishes that we cooked is a twist on a kind of British classic, which is baked beans on toast.
The slow-roasted butter beans are a delicious twist on this traditional dish.
For me, the most important thing is fresh, good quality ingredients, and we know exactly what we're eating.
But how healthy is it really? Only one way to find out, on an Olympic hopeful.
Got to make sure that, you know, in competition time, I've got to trim down a little bit. I cut back on my carbs, I eat more protein. Got a bit of carbs, you know, in the bread, a bit of fibre. This looks to me like it's granary bread, so there's a bit more fibre in that as opposed to white bread. So this is a really healthy diet.
And what traditionally follows breakfast, just in time to give us a mid-morning boost? Coffee. Coffee houses first appeared in London in the 1650s. Bar Italia has been open here in Soho since 1949.
The secret of a good cappuccino is not to boil the milk, it has to be frothy without being hot. And you do it not by looking in the jug to see the milk, you do it by listening to the jug. English people now are much more discerning. I think they really realise that, you know, good coffee is important as well. Bar Italia hasn't changed or deviated. We don't want to be the trendiest place in town. We just do what we do best, which is serve good coffee to really nice people 24 hours a day. And that's it.
With coffee over in Soho, it's a 10-minute walk to the 5-star Corinthia Hotel, where a Michelin-starred chef is showcasing the very best of British produce.
What I wanted to do here is get back to really what it's all about, is the simplicity of the food and great quality of the food. I think British food now is looking at that provenance. You know, people now want to know where things come from and how things are grown and the welfare of the animals. If you look at our fish supplies, I generally tend to buy off the south coast. I use people for the lobsters, for the crabs, sea bass, mullet, whatever it is. I will pick and choose on the day from those suppliers.
By the time you've just about recovered from lunch, it'll be time for one of London's oldest and most pleasurable food experiences.
Britain and tea are, of course, sort of go together. You know, we're known as a nation of tea lovers. And the story is an interesting story. It goes back really to the 17th century when tea is an exotic foreign drink, very, very luxurious, very expensive, that's brought to London. And then the whole tradition of having afternoon tea happens later on in the 18th century, and that is this idea, but again it's very fashionable and it's an aristocratic thing, and it's to do with you've had a very early lunch, you're going to eat very late, but in the middle of the afternoon you're going to have something delicious to eat, a small little nibble, and that really takes off.
If there hasn't been enough time for leisurely afternoon tea, then dinner will be the next big food event. And in the shadow of the city's towers is the epicentre of Britain's most popular cuisine. The first Indian restaurant was opened in 1809 in central London. 200 years later, curry has almost become our national dish. And in amongst familiar Punjabi dishes, Tayyab's offers its customers other specialities like nahari, mughal korma and karahi lamb chops.
My father came to the country in the early 60s, worked in the East End of London in the rag trade. This is where he used to come for his cup of tea and 2 toast early in the morning going to work. He offered the guy who owned the cafe, if you're ever going to sell, potential buyer. My dad took over and just started from there. Our menu at the moment still, we have daily specials, and they are the same daily specials which my father writ out 30 years ago.
But to keep a city marching on its stomach, vast quantities of fresh produce are needed every day. And there's only one place that can supply it: the giant new Spitalfields Market. Now located close to the Olympic Stadium, it's been operating since the 13th century and still trading through each night 6 days a week. No longer just selling British fruit and vegetables, it caters to all of London's food tastes.
Well, the industry has changed rapidly. I mean, if my father come into the business now, he wouldn't recognise 50% of the stuff. You've only got to see the amount of Asian friends we got here, and we do lots and lots of business with. We're importing things like chlorella, doody, things like that was unheard of years ago, which are part of our diet now.
And as dawn breaks and the night's business is concluded, only one thing is on everyone's mind: breakfast.
London is defined by its food in a number of ways, I think, because London is a great city. It's a city that people have come and settled in for hundreds of years, and therefore they brought their food with them, because food is that important thing, you know, it's the thing that reminds you of your home. So for me, one of the fascinating things about London, the striking things about its food scene, is its multiculturalism. I think now there's an excitement that we have fantastic produce in Britain. We've got great meat, we've got great cheeses, we've got great hams. There's a real interest now in looking into different parts of the country, finding foods, bring them. So in London, you can go to a restaurant, for example, one of the Mark Hicks restaurants, and you'll eat beautiful food, and everything on that menu would have been sourced from Britain, and you're literally told, you know, these little brown shrimps come from Morecambe Bay, let's say, and this particular apple brandy comes from Somerset, which is famous for its apples. Britain and tea, of course, sort of go together. You know, we're known as a nation of tea lovers. And the story is an interesting story. It goes back really to the 17th century, when tea is an exotic foreign drink, very, very luxurious, very expensive, that's brought to London. It's popularised really by the wife of Charles II. And because she drinks tea, she's come from Portugal, she marries Charles II. The royalty are doing this, therefore others follow. I mean, that's a classic thing, basically. So tea is a very aristocratic thing. And then the whole tradition of having afternoon tea happens later on in the 18th century, and that is this idea, but again, it's very fashionable and it's an aristocratic thing, and it's to do with you've had a very early lunch, you're going to eat very late, but in the middle of the afternoon you're going to have something delicious to eat, a small little nibble, and that really takes off.